Hello, everybody. This is some random Neko waking up from her nap to greet the world for the day. And by greet, I mean celebrate May the 4th be with you by going down memory lane and revisiting the Star Wars film that started it all for me. And no, I'm not talking about the original trilogy, which came out years before I was even a thought in my parents' heads. And no, I'm not talking about the prequel trilogy either, since I was too young to realize it even existed. And no, I am definitely not talking about the sequel trilogy, which I'll always consider non-canon no matter what anyone says. The film I'm talking about is Star Wars: The Clone Wars, the 2008 animated film that was the start of my journey down the Star Wars rabbit hole. As the Clone Wars sweeps through more of the galaxy, Anakin Skywalker and his new Padawan learner, Ahsoka Tano, embark on a mission to rescue the kidnapped son of crime lord Jabba the Hutt. Plotting against them is the renegade Count Dooku and his assassin, Asajj Ventress, who will do anything to ensure the Jedi's failure. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan Kenobi leads the clone army against the Separatist forces, and Padme Amidala investigates the true plot behind the kidnapping. Narratively speaking, there isn't much going on plot-wise or character development-wise, since this isn't a standalone film, but a pilot for the TV series of the same name. It's essentially 3 episodes held together by the main plot thread of rescuing Jabba's son. And while many people don't like the 3-episode turned into a film format, I feel like as long as you're able to string it together in a reasonable or believable manner, then it's totally fine. Anyways, the film serves as an introduction to the Star Wars universe, starting with the Clone Wars, which takes place during the prequel era directly after Attack of the Clones. And it does a good job of doing so in a manner that doesn't completely overwhelm you, especially if you didn't know or barely knew anything about Star Wars to begin with. The film showcases the broad scope of the Clone Wars conflict through subterfuge and battles, and we're able to see all sides of the conflict through the varying perspectives of the people involved, such as the frontliners on the ground, the battleships in space, the senators, the Jedi Council, the Separatists, the Sith, and more. We're also introduced to the characters we'll get to know and follow in the animated series. On the Republic side, we've got Anakin Skywalker, a Jedi Knight who carries both the burdens of his past and the heavy responsibilities of being a key figure in the war. Obi-Wan Kenobi, the famed negotiator and Anakin's former master. Ahsoka Tano, Anakin's new Padawan who starts off as arrogant and eager to prove herself, but will later grow to become one of the best characters in the series. And Rex, a clone who's got plenty of grit and determination to spare. On the flip side, we've got Count Dooku, the Sith Lord leader of the Separatists, and Asajj Ventress, a mysterious assassin with a grudge against the Jedi. Then sprinkled throughout are other characters we'll get to see more of in the show, such as Mace Windu, Master Yoda, Padme Amidala, Chancellor Palpatine, and other Jedi from the Order. And while we might not have a great narrative, we still get to have great character dynamics. I love watching the witty back and forth between Obi-Wan and Anakin, and how it's like watching a tired older brother trying to rein in his reckless younger brother. And while the relationship between Anakin and Ahsoka was understandably rough in the beginning, it was fun seeing them be snippy with each other while slowly coming to an understanding and acceptance that allows them to bond as teacher and student. Also, just a little shout out for the droids. R2-D2 continues to take first place as the best droid in the universe, while C-3PO continues to be C-3PO. And the Separatist droids are all so stupid I love them. The droids are pretty much the best part of the film and the biggest source of humor as well. In regards to the production, it's an impressive CGI animation film from a studio and franchise known at the time for its live-action films. The animation was pretty clean and smooth, especially with all the scenes that had many different things going on. The character designs were slightly angular and sharp, with some grit and texture, but it's fitting considering the story takes place in the middle of a galaxy-wide war. The soundtrack is completely Star Wars with the epic fanfare and orchestral music, along with a few different scores to match the setting of whichever location we were at, or whatever battle was going on. And the voice acting was on point. Whenever I think about these characters, I don't see or hear their live-action counterparts, but instead their animated ones. They were just that iconic to me. But the highlights of the production were the battles that were interesting and creative, from the action sequences to the camera angles and everything in between. These weren't just different shades of a tower defense game with copy-paste or as minimal as possible movement. There was dynamic motion with multiple moving parts and varying perspectives. There were actual strategies that we get to see planned and executed on and off the field, instead of just hack and slash button mashing or let's brute force our way through it and it'll somehow work because the plot demands it. And I absolutely love to see it. I also love to see the lightsaber duels, which were cool and engaging, with each character having their own unique style of dueling that's clearly shown instead of a copy-paste for each lightsaber-wielding character. However, despite all the good things it had going for it, when Star Wars: The Clone Wars was first released, it didn't do so well. Some of the criticisms that were given, I agree with. The animation is slightly clunky and a little off at some points, with editing that was a little rough. Same with the dialogue, which could get stiff at times, and some of the lines were awkward in either writing or delivery, while also coming in at odd times to the point of feeling shoehorned in. Also, the back and forth snipping between Anakin and Ahsoka eventually got old, and when Obi-Wan confronts Ventress, he kind of flirts with her and it was just awkward to hear. And remember what I said about how I enjoy the 3 episodes turned into one film format as long as it's held together by a reasonable or believable plot thread? Yeah, that's not so much the case here. And I think that might be because the production team was a little too excited and eager to show off all the cool and dynamic action sequences they could do now, and ended up neglecting the story as a result. While the battles were amazing to watch and the general conflict and characters were introduced well, the plot thread wasn't spread out reasonably enough to justify the 1.5 hour runtime. For example, Padme's supposed to start an investigation to uncover the true mastermind behind the kidnapping, but she doesn't even show up for this until 20 minutes before the film's supposed to end. However, despite the legit criticisms, I don't agree with all the hate the film has gotten. It was clear that many people probably expected this film to be the next coming of the original trilogy, or to be just as sophisticated and polished as one would expect a Star Wars film to be, only to get mad when it wasn't. Because this film wasn't made to try and recapture the magic and epicness of the original trilogy. It was made to introduce Star Wars to a new audience. Honestly, the biggest mistake the film made was that it should have been a 1-hour TV special instead of theatrically released film. I believe it would have been better received and better put together if it had been made with that format in mind. For example, we still would have opened on the Jabba's son kidnapping plot thread before jumping into the Battle of Christophsis. The battle would then be shortened to allow the rescue attempt to happen sooner, while still showing the friction between Anakin and Ahsoka. Then we'd go straight to the monastery without the battle to get there, jumping right into rescuing Jabba's son. Then the ambush and escape would occur, but be shortened as well, allowing the investigation to find the true mastermind behind the kidnapping to begin. Meanwhile, there would be some scenes sprinkled throughout from the Republic, Jedi Council, and Separatist side of things about the situation regarding the war and kidnapping. Then we go straight to Tatooine where the friction between Anakin and Ahsoka begins to lessen, and we get some insight into Anakin's past as he gives his take on how criffed up the whole situation is, which would give Ahsoka an in to connect with him as she gives her thoughts about it as well. Then the investigation would conclude just in time for the pair to return Jabba's son, after almost getting killed doing so of course, and the special would end with everything tied up all nice and mostly neat. But then again, hindsight is 2020, and all things considered, I'm just glad this film exists. Overall, Star Wars The Clone Wars, the film, gets a solid B. It might just be the nostalgia-tinted glasses I'm wearing, but it's a good film for what's essentially 3 episodes tied together by a very thin plot thread. And that's because it works well for what it truly is, an introduction into the world of Star Wars for new and younger audiences of the time. As someone who'd never known about Star Wars until that point, it was fun being introduced to the wide cast of characters that the Clone Wars had to offer, while being treated to a well-made animated film with battle sequences that were creative and dynamic, with actual strategy involved, and political intrigue that was interesting to watch unfold with all its different factions and moving parts. And despite some genuine criticisms, Lucasfilms did a pretty good job all things considered, since Clone Wars the film walked, so Clone Wars the show could soar. Because without this film, I would have continued to live in ignorance of Star Wars until my curiosity would finally get the better of me many years later. So if you haven't had a chance to dip your toes into the franchise just yet, give Star Wars The Clone Wars a watch, and get ready to enter an ever-expanding universe set in a time long ago in a galaxy far, far away. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Reminder that this is just my opinion, so you can take it with as many grains of salt as you want. I don't mind either way, and would love to know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and comment which film you'd like me to give my 2 cents about next. This is some random Neko, going off to take a nap now. Don't forget to keep calm and just meow.